Hi everyone, I'm Lucy and I'm here with my colleague Sarah, and we're so excited to welcome you to the final session of All Aboard Learning's Classroom Implementation course. So here are the core aims for the 3-week course, just as a reminder. So to develop an understanding of the core techniques to use in a phonics lesson, know and feel confident using the key tools in All Aboard Phonics, and finally to have a secure understanding of the basics for intervention work using All Aboard Phonics Plus. So today in our final session, we have 3 simple objectives which all centre around All Aboard Phonics Plus, our intervention programme. So 1, to explore the key principles to All Aboard Phonics Plus intervention. 2, to develop an understanding of the magic of trainer text. And 3, to explore eye tracking and the 10-day challenge. So did anyone work out the secret code from last week, which was displayed in pictophones? So the question was, where do bugs sleep? And the answer is under their covers. So although this was just a fun way to explore pictophones, there's no reason that this kind of riddle decoding game couldn't be played with children. I'm sure they would love it, feeling like they are detectives. We actually have a trainer text creator tool, which your school gets access to if you sign up to the premium subscription. And this allows you to simply and quickly create your own trainer text for your classroom environments. We showed you a few examples last week, but we have some more to share with you today as well. We think you'll be amazed at the power of this tool. So if you sign up for premium, we are certainly loving having this at our disposal. Also, one super fun use of the pictophones is from Pennine View in Doncaster, who actually created their own escape room event. They used the pictophones to write out the clues which the children had to solve. And their parents and carers were invited, and apparently it was a huge success. The children loved helping the adults to decode. So moving on, let's start with a few quick quiz questions, exploring some of the key concepts from last week before we launch into the intervention. And we've made them stumpers, so good luck. So the first question is, how many GPCs are there in the word cheat? Yes, it's 3. Ch-eat. Despite having 5 letters, it only has 3 graphemes and therefore 3 phonemes, or 3 GPCs. Next question. True or false? Children should read every sentence until fluent. Well done, false. We actually always recommend rereading a phrase between 3 to 5 words. Some sentences may be too long. Also, we usually limit this to 3 rereads so that the stress and frustration doesn't kick in. So I'll hand back over to Sarah now, who will explore the first aim of today's session.
Great. Thanks, Lucy. So let's move on, to exploring the key principles of All Aboard Phonics Plus, the intervention. Now, the idea with All Aboard Phonics Plus is that any child who is dropping behind the group is given targeted help. You as teaching professionals have limited time, and so the first key principle is to group children by the stage of AAP Plus intervention they're on. It's much better to give focused support rather than a broad general intervention with children at all different levels in a single group. The second key point is that the learner should always continue with their class phonics sessions as normal. The aim is for intervention to sort out any issues that are causing them to drop behind, and then the whole class session helps them keep some kind of pace with their peers. This means 2 phonics sessions per day for children in AAP+, 1 whole class session and 1 intervention session. The third key point is that a teacher or a highly trained TA should be running the interventions. These children are the ones that need the most support and are at the most risk of failing. We need someone with lots of experience and training delivering help, but more on that in a bit. Let's move on to some key terminology you should be familiar with to run AAP+. Phases. This is easy. These simply link to the main phonics program. When you see the word phase in AAP+, it simply refers to the phase in the main SSP that the child's class is on. Stages, which frustratingly rhymes a little bit, is a new term specific to AAP+. There are 8 stages in the intervention process. A child on AAP+ should be confident in each stage before moving on to the next. And then finally, PORT assessments. There's a PORT assessment, a kind of formative assessment, at the end of each stage to help inform whether or not a child is ready to move on to the next stage. So phase, easy, same as the main SSP. Stage, simply where they're at an AAP+, and PORT assessment, how you determine when they're ready to pass out of the stage. Now, moving on, As we've just said, we've split the intervention process into 8 stages, kind of like the stages of a journey on a ship. You know, we love a good ocean metaphor here at All Aboard. At the end of each stage, you hope to come into port. But if the child does not pass the port assessment for that stage, then they need to spend more time at sea working on it. So here are the 8 stages. Stage 1 is learning the phonemes taught so far. Stage 2 is learning the graphemes taught so far. Stage 3 is reading CVC words. Stage 4, writing those CVC words. Stage 5 is reading more complex short words with adjacent consonants. Stage 6 is writing those words. And then stage 7 is reading long, complex words, and stage 8 is writing those words. It's pretty simple. All right, so let's discuss how to implement the program. So you've spotted a child in your class that seems to be struggling. The very first thing you need to do is make a timetabling action plan. As discussed, we strongly recommend that you keep the child going with the whole class phonics sessions. It's so important that they continue to absorb what's being taught and don't fall further behind. Make a plan to remove them for additional AP phonics support later in the day, perhaps, if you do phonics in the morning. Our hope is that you as a teaching team are providing an immediate response to difficulty so that at first signs of falling behind, a child starts doing the intervention in addition to whole class sessions. Let's move on to step 2. We want to get the parents on board wherever possible. So use the guidance for parents handout in the manual and get them on board with helping in the right way. For example, we've included advice on how to do a low stress practice session at home and how to work on rereading for fluency. Then, once you've identified your struggling learner, you fill out a baseline assessment checklist for them. Now, if you're not sure whether a child matches one of the patterns described in this assessment, just do a bit of reading with them to figure it out, ticking the boxes as you go. If you have the manual with you, you can even pause the video now and flip to the baseline and have a look. You can see examples there of what we're looking for, things like guessing, skipping words, low fluency, poor working memory. One thing to note on the baseline is if you're only seeing patterns of category E, which is contrast sensitivity in the baseline assessment, then you really only need to apply those solutions listed. You really may not need to go through the intervention at all. It's indicated in the manual, but just a little asterisk there to look out for that. It's not very common. Okay, so step 4, we get to start. But what stage do you start at? Well, that's actually the beauty of the baseline assessment. The baseline will tell you what stage to start at for a given child based on the identified learning difficulties. If you have multiple patterns that it flags, which is common, just start at the lowest stage recommended. And if you're unsure, start at stage 1. Within each stage, you should only use the resources for the phases that you completed in the whole class sessions with them. So that means that you should use the phases 2 and 3 word banks listed in a lesson plan for a child who's currently in the middle of phase 4 in the whole class sessions. That just ensures that they should technically be able to read every word in intervention. At the end of each stage, you try the informal port assessment and move on if the child has passed. You can see here an example of a port assessment. It's very short and sweet. If you feel that the children have built the skills described, move on to the next stage and celebrate. If there's more work to be done, just repeat that stage for another week of practice. We recommend shooting for around an 80% plus accuracy on port assessments in order to move on. So that's it. 5 simple stages from identifying struggling learners, doing a baseline assessment, administering the stage-based intervention, and passing out of AAP Plus, hopefully, all together. All right, let's pause here for a little recap quiz. For a child who is struggling with their reading, how many phonics sessions do we recommend each day? Yes, the correct answer is 2. 1 whole class phonics session, and then an AAP Plus phonics session focusing on their cause of difficulty. Reading is the most important outcome in Key Stage 1, so it's worth every bit of effort. All right, one final little note before we dive into looking at a sample session. When you start a child on AAP Plus, you'll need to introduce them to 5 new pictophones. These are the crab, the dragon, the scarecrow, the star, and my favorite, the triceratops with his bucket and mops. You can probably hear straight away from the onset sounds that these pictophones are the consonant cluster pictophones. We don't use them in the main at SSP, but we found them to be a big help for children who struggle with auditory processing, which is the majority of children in intervention. They really often struggle with blending consonant pairs, and these new pictophones just provide a little shortcut for that. Okay, over to Lucy now to look at how to run an actual AAP Plus lesson.
Okay, yeah, so let's drill down into the stage 1 intervention week as an example of how the program is structured. So you can see there are 5 sessions mapped out for a 1-week intervention, which you then repeat if the child has not passed the port assessment. So each stage takes 1 week of work if doing daily interventions. Each daily session has 3 activities to work through, and these activities are each designed to develop the particular skills the learner needs for this stage. So now for the second half of our dive into AAP Plus, we're going to look at a sample stage intervention, so you get a feel of it. The first activity in session 1 of stage 1 is the essential pictophone check. And you can see in this activity that you're just reviewing the pictophone names and sounds. On the first run through, they just say the names, and then on the second, they voice the phonemes. Now, next up is word breaker, which by now you know very well, and you take turns to say a word, break it down, and then blend it back together. Can anybody remember the official name for this technique? Yeah, it's a segment reblend technique. Okay, and then next up is sound switcher game. And this is where you point to the 3 pictophone cards, asking your learner just to say the phoneme, and then you start to increase your speed. Now, when doing this activity, what should we look out for? Well, what do we need to make sure our students are doing when they say the sounds? Yes, we want to avoid too many schwas or that at the end of those consonant sounds. So for these 3 activities, they make up the first day of stage 1, and there are 5 days for each stage. And if you're ever not sure how an activity is meant to go, you can check out our YouTube channel, which has a lot of AAP Plus activity demos, and we'll drop the link into the session notes for you. Now at stage 1, you're just working with a phoneme. So on the 3rd page, you'll see there's a pictophone bank. And you should only use the pictophones that the learner has already been introduced to in their whole class session. So you can see that the port assessment there at the bottom, and the port assessment for stage 1 is to see if the learner can segment CVC words into individual phonemes. Now you can do a port assessment at any point. You don't actually have to wait to finish all 5 sessions if the learner is finding them really easy. Just assess and move on if they pass. Then you will see stage 2 starts to introduce the graphemes. So there's a grapheme bank to make it easy for you to pick from. Then stage 3 puts it all together to start making those simple CVC words. And this is where the trainer text flashcards start to be used as a resource. From stage 3 onwards, you'll find word banks directly after the lesson plan activities. And we've tried to make it so that you're having to think of no sample words on the spot. So just to be extra explicit, let's say a child is up to stage 3 in AAP Plus and is currently in phase 5 unit 1 in their whole class lessons in year 1. That means we can pick words from the word banks of phases 2, 3 and 4. And it can be quite nice to mix and match so you get a good blend of those GPCs. Now, the trainer text word packs are also marked to show you what stage and phase they are suitable for. So for this child, you would want to pick the trainer text word pack marked stage 3 and 4, since they're on stage 3 in AAP Plus, and then phases 2, 3 or 4. It sounds like a lot of moving parts, but it really is actually quite simple. Just pick up the flashcard deck that matches a phase and stage for each pupil. Now, with the trainer text flashcards that are often used in AAP Plus, you'll just a little tip to show the learner the plain text side first. And as soon as things feel tricky or the learner isn't sure, that's when you flip over to the trainer text side to use the pictophones as a prompt to the phonemes. Now, this is vital because we have a letters first policy. We always want a child to work from the letters first when decoding, so they don't become over reliant on the characters. But at the very first sign of difficulty, flip them over to the trainer text. It is also useful to have the pictophone card deck and grapheme card deck to hand. You can use these to build your own trainer text words by placing the grapheme cards down on the table and placing the pictophones above the corresponding graphemes. I'll hand you over to Sarah to see this in action.
Great. So we're going to watch a 2-minute video now of my colleague working with a student at St. James Primary. He's up to stage 3 on AAP Plus. Can you spot what she does with the flashcards at the beginning? What do you notice about the learner's phoneme voicing? And what does she do when her pupil gets stuck?
Right, so Louis, we're going to do a bit of a pictophone check. So I'll go through the different flashcards, see if you can tell me the sound that the pictophones represent. Yeah, the phonemes that they represent. So this one is
ants in pink pants.
Which sound?
Toes is going to explode.
Well done.
Pig in the rig.
Well done.
Moose with juice.
Well done.
With a glue head.
Well done. What sound does that one make? Fantastic.
Nurse with a purse.
Well, let's just have a little look at the ones that were tricky again, see if we can remember them. That one. Ooh. Who is he?
Toad is going to explode.
He's a toad. So what sound does he make? What sound does toad start with? Toad.
It's going to explode.
Yeah, what sound does he make if it's toad? Fantastic. That one?
Rat with a bat.
So he makes that. Ooh, well done.
Umbrella Man putting up this umbrella.
Yeah, umbrella man with a suntan, so he makes a... Oh, well done. Last one.
Duh.
Dog on a log. Fantastic. Well done. So I'm going to play a game called Go Fish, and from my captain's hat, you're going to pick a card out. So if I show you one, like this. I'm going to try to read it this time from just the letters. If things feel a little bit tricky, you can't quite remember what those graphemes are, we can flip over and you've got the pictophones to help you remember those sounds.
Okay.
Yeah? Shall we have a go at this one first and then you can pick one?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, have a go at that one.
Yeah,
what sound is that?
I don't know.
Who's them? You don't know? Not too sure? Should we flip over? We'll have a little bit more help.
Kangaroo needs in the news.
Brilliant. So
in pink pants.
yeah, you can just say the sound this time. Don't worry about saying the character name. So you're exactly right. Brilliant. Blend it. Well done. Brilliant. Nice. All right.
We are seeing some really astonishing results with this in schools who are up and running with AAP+. You can see how the intervention is designed to pinpoint the exact cause of reading difficulty for a learner and then build an individualized approach to intervention for them. Okay, so we finished the end of our first aim, which is understanding AAP+. Let's move on now to the magic of trainer text. Remember that the pictophones are memorable little characters that help children pick the correct phoneme given a grapheme. Trainer text is the name for words or letters with the pictophones floating above. Here's an example of that. Here we have three short common words, gas, has, and was, but they're exactly the kind of words that a whole word sight reader in intervention will struggle with because although they look very similar, the phonemes are totally different. In the word gas, we have the goat in a boat representing the g consonant. It is followed by the ant in pink pants to represent that short ah sound. And finally, the seal with a wheel represents the s sound. Conversely, in has and was, you'll notice that that letter S is represented by the Zuto from Pluto. This character differentiates the soft s sound from the harder z sound. In the same way, you'll notice that the ox in red socks is above the letter A in was. The variety of phonemic characters allows us to express the correct vowel sounds in such a way that it is quick and easy for the child to grasp. We've all seen children get stuck on the word was. They sound out was, which absolutely could be phonetically correct. And yet it is a big leap to switch from that to was. But now the ox in red socks above the letter A and the Zuto from Pluto above the S starts to give the game away, and we have was. The child can work it out and get the word right without struggle. It's almost like magic, which is why we call it trainer text magic. Over time, the brain automatically maps these grapheme to phoneme correspondences, and then the trainer text can be taken away, much like removing training wheels on a bike. We find that starts to happen quite clearly in just a few weeks of daily decoding practice using pictophones. We've seen this process happening with over 15,000 struggling readers in our online reading program called Easy Read. With those struggling readers, it normally takes around 30 short sessions to make most common words begin to seem easy. The average struggling 8-year-old gains 2 years of reading age in around 120 sessions, or about 3 to 4 months. And this is actually published independent research, and you can read our publication for it in the Journal of Research and Reading, and we'll put the link to that in the session notes. Okay, over to Lucy to show you a little bit of trainer text in action that she observed at recent school visits.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, so as we said earlier, we've seen some amazing examples of how trainer text can be used throughout the school environment, from display boards, in role play and small world areas to worksheets. And we'd like to share a small selection of these now and hope they may inspire you. So you can see in this first one, we've got the tricky words and also the GPCs displayed. And you can download all the pictophones so you can adapt and make your own if need be. The next one, we've got a writing station for Jack and Jill in a foundation classroom. Again, the pictophones support the writing process and act as that visual aid. Then we've got a continuous provision activity where the pictophones that have been taught are there to support reading. And then again, similar to the last photo, the pictophones are used here to support reading and writing. We've then got pictophones for some simple CVC words. Again, on the next one, we've got another continuous provision area where word flashcards contain the pictophones, but only the ones that have been taught so far. In the next one, you'll see the days of the week. And it's the first phoneme for each day has a pictophone above. And these were used each morning during registration to support the children in remembering and recognising the pictophones. The next one, we've got another reading and writing activity where, again, tricky word trainer text cards are there to support. Again, showing that all words are decodable. And the last one, we've got a lovely fine motor skills activity, just displaying the first set of pictophones and simple CVC words with these graphemes. We are continually amazed by the creativity and dedication of our All Aboard teachers. Again, and like we said earlier, we now have our trainer text creator tool, which will enable you to actually quickly produce these resources just like these. But remember, your school needs to be a premium subscriber. Now, just before we move on to our final aim, we want to share with you 2 trainer-based workbooks we've made. So we have a reception workbook, which includes lesson plans and trainer text worksheets, which can be used in those weeks after phase 4 ends to revise and refresh. And then we have another workbook called the Year 1 Phonics Review, which can actually be purchased in sets of 10. And this is a full of decoding activities for students to work through in advance of the phonics screening. Now, the first 2 activities use a trainer text so children can revise their GCPs with the support of the pictophones. But then the next 2 activities are in plain text so the children then can apply their knowledge. And now I'll hand you back over to Sarah for our final section.
Great, thanks. Yep, our final aim is all about eye tracking, which you'll see cropping up in about 1 in 3 of the struggling readers you work with in intervention. Now, the main patterns of weak eye tracking and convergence are the following. Child reads single words okay, but struggles with a page of text. Child skips words, looks away a lot from the page, seems to have variable activity from day to day, passes an eye test with no problem, and covered overlays make no difference. If you've seen any of these children in your class, I'm going to show you why that happens. It's quite common for children to struggle to converge both eyes on a book and to track their eyes along a line of text. And this is why. You can see on a couple of large font words, large text it says, and then a couple of small font words underneath, small text. We are now going to move all of the text by a few millimeters as if the eyes are no longer looking at the same spot, which is what happens when you have weak convergence. Can you see how the single large word is still legible, but the small text has become quite blurred? I guess you can also see why a child dealing this would not want to look at the page. It's not because they're resistant or lazy, it's actually physically uncomfortable for them. And this pattern gets worse when a child is tired. So reading later in the day is often harder for these children. So let's do a little recap quiz. Which of the following are strong indicators of weak eye tracking? You can choose 3 answers for this. Yep, so it was struggling to read a page in small font, worse reading later in the day, and fidgeting or looking away from the book page when reading. So we've identified the pattern. What is a solution? Well, we have found an extremely simple exercise routine that only takes seconds and will achieve long-term results, which I'll demonstrate for you here. You can do it anywhere with your children, and when a child does the exercise well, it'll fix the issue or vastly improve it in about 7 to 10 days. You can measure the impact of the exercise by testing the minimum text size that the learner is comfortable with, which of course should go down after the exercises. Now, the other alternative to this exercise I'm about to show you is for the child to go and see a behavioral optometrist, but this can be very expensive and usually takes months to achieve a result. Okay. Now, this exercise has 2 stages. The first step is just to see if the child can hold up their fingernail in front of them and focus on that nail for 10 seconds. Now, you can see I'm not stretched like this. I'm not like going cross-eyed. You want a comfortable bend of the elbow here, about the distance that a book would be from the child's face. Now, if they can stare at that fingernail with laser focus without fidgeting too much or looking away, then they've cracked the first step. Most children are ready to move on to stage 2, which is to simply move that finger kind of like you're swiping on an iPhone or a tablet, just an inch or 2 to the left and an inch or 2 to the right. And you want to see if they can track that fingernail with laser intensity without moving their head. So you don't want to see this. Okay, it's a nice neck workout, but not what we're looking for. And you don't want to see this, where they're straining the ocular muscles of the eye to their peripheral vision. It's really short and contained. And here's the duration for the exercise. You want to do 10 swipes back and forth, 10 times a day for 10 days. Really easy to remember, 10, 10, 10s. You can have a little chart that you can tick things off during the school day. We have a printout on eye tracking exercises that you'll need to send home with the parents for them to work on it there. And that's the whole exercise. It works brilliantly. And you'll see it really helps about those 30% of pupils in intervention. Okay, wrapping up eye tracking, I'm going to give you back to Lucy to finish this out for the day.
Yeah, so we're nearly at the end of today's session. Let's just have a quick recap of what we've covered today. So we've explored AAP Plus and how this can be implemented. We've looked at the magic of trainertext. And then we've just looked at a common reading difficulty, eye tracking, and that 10-day exercise as a solution to this problem. And that brings us actually to the end of our 3-session CPD course. Many congratulations, you've made it to the end. So here's the email address to send your feedback to. So schools@allaboardlearning.com. All we ask is that you email us some feedback on what you found good and what you feel could be improved on the course. Please put the email subject as CPD course completion. Please could you also give the course a star rating out of 5, again with your feedback. So this is a course completed. So as ever, please send in any questions you have along to us as well. Thank you for sticking with us, and we look forward to working with you over the coming months and years.